And now we have, I'm delighted to say, Mark Goldbridge with us from the United Stand. Mark, good morning to you. How you doing?
I'm good, thanks. You?
Yeah, well, we're very interested to see what your response has been like over the last 24 hours to the news that Mourinho has gone first. I mean, we'll talk about the potential replacements and whether or not an interim manager is the right way to go and who that should be. But, you know, what was your take? What was the eventual tipping point that forced the Manchester United board and ownership to move?
Well, what we're hearing now is it's the old traditional player power that maybe Ed Woodward spoke to some players on Monday and that was it. I mean, obviously running a fan channel, I think that they should be more aware of the fan opinion because we're the ones who pay the wages. We're the one who pays Woodward's wages. And I think the fans' tipping point was probably 2-3 months ago, some back to Sevilla last season. But I think it became untenable. I think it should be written in stone, really. If you go to Anfield and put in a performance like that, you should be sacked. And I think enough was enough. And I'm quite surprised the board did it when they did. I thought they would wait longer. So I'm really pleased and was quite surprised yesterday morning that they'd done it.
Do you have any sympathy for Jose Mourinho at this point?
I do, but that's because I'm an empathetic person, and I think anybody who loses the job, I just always feel sorry for them. But actually, I need to sweep that aside because I think that the opportunity he had will go down as a failure at Manchester United, and he should have done better, I believe, with what he had, and he didn't achieve the things that he said. I mean, one of the biggest ones for me is I'll leave this club in a better position than I inherited it, and I think that is clearly not the case.
How bad a position are they in? How many years has he rewound the clock on Manchester United, Mark?
I think there's an interesting point, and I think, you know, Liverpool fans would probably be good to ask about this as well, is that if you look at what United achieved under Mourinho, second place, Europa League, Carabao Cup, Liverpool haven't achieved any trophies in the last couple of years, neither have Spurs. But would they want what they've got now over what United have? And would United fans want what Liverpool have got over what we achieved? And I think the big thing at United is the style of football. And yeah, we came second and yeah, we won the Europa League, but the football was never good enough. And I personally would rather have what Liverpool have got than have those trophies because we've won trophies in the past. And I think when you say how far have they knocked us back, I think Moyes was obviously a disaster, but I think we were in a better position under Van Gaal than we were Mourinho. So I think he has knocked us back probably to maybe after David Moyes. I think we're probably back there again.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. Like the one issue that we're trying to wrestle with at the moment is how good or bad are the current players. Like if the right manager come in, injected a style of play, added a few signings, is that okay, or does this entire squad need massive remedial action? Do half the squad need to go, for example?
I've been saying for a while that I think if you put whoever the manager is, somebody who's just got the right sort of Manchester United mentality to go on the front foot, I think that there is a very good 11 there. I think, you know, if you look at players that aren't getting game time, and yeah, they've got to step up to the plate now, and Paul Pogba's obviously the one that people be watching, but people like Eric Bailly, Fred, Andres Pereira, Alexis Sanchez, I think Rashford, Martial, Lingard, yeah, they've had flashes, but you'd expect more from them. You've got the young right back that Mourinho did get hold of, Luke Shaw. Obviously, you've got the best goalkeeper in the world. So there's fundamentally a good team there. I do think if you want to challenge Man City and Liverpool, that money needs to be spent, maybe 2 or 3, maybe 4 players. But that team's definitely a top 4 team. And it's definitely better than what we've seen under Mourinho. So I'm optimistic.
What did you think Gary Neville meant on Sunday on Sky Sports when he said that the club should press the club needs to press the reset button? How deep a change does that mean? Like, what does pressing the reset button mean?
I think that means top to bottom. I think that means players, manager, coaching staff, and the board. I think, you know, Gary Neville's a very good pundit, and he's a very passionate Manchester United fan. I don't agree with everything he said. I don't agree with what he said about Paul Pogba yesterday, but I do believe that Manchester United's problems aren't just at Jose Mourinho's door. I think you sort of need to separate the two. When you've got a bad performing team, you've got bad football, you know, you are where you are in the league, and you've got transfer players turning against you, that's a football decision. Sacking Mourinho was right. But there is a bigger issue at Manchester United. There are no leaders throughout the club. I think the neglect of a captaincy has been poor from Mourinho. We do lack leaders on the pitch. Players' heads go down. And above that, the board is an issue. But I always say the board was an issue when we won the Champions League. The board was an issue when we won Premier Leagues. It's the same board. I think people have sort of confused the performances on the pitch with the board. The board did deliver to Mourinho more than enough for him to do better. But it would be nice to have owners who are focused on the football side and not focused on not being United fans, but just just their bank account. So yeah, I think that's what Gary Neville was talking about there. The way the club's being run isn't the best.
You say you disagreed with his point on Paul Pogba. How so?
I just think that. Well, I actually do respect what Gary Neville did, because he stuck to his guns on Sky Sports last night by saying that, I don't buy the scheduled Instagram post by Pogba. I think it was unprofessional. And there is talk this morning that the club are going to fine Pogba for that. So I just think that the timing of Gary Neville, who's very, very got a big sway with the United fans, coming out after the manager's been sacked and sort of going in on Paul Pogba, I just felt that wasn't the time. I think Mourinho's gone. All players deserve another chance. I'm not a big fan of Matic and Lukaku, but I will give them time under a new manager because it's a new system. I just felt that, Mourinho's gone, that negativity's gone, let's all come together. And Gary Neville comes out with, you can do one as well. But on the other hand, I think it's great when you get a pundit who's basically saying, I don't really rate Paul Pogba, I like him out of the club, because at least it's honest. I just personally think we might see the best of Paul Pogba now.
Well, the thing is, like Paul Pogba says, that post was scheduled. The Mirror this morning are reporting that there was a lot of high fives at the training ground yesterday, and Paul Pogba was leading the celebrations, really, if you want to use that word, after Jose Mourinho was gone. Like you say, you're an empathetic person. Surely you've got some empathy for poor Jose Mourinho out the door, and they're immediately celebrating behind his back.
I would have to concede that I do. I do. I just think that, I suppose when you flip it the other way, is Mourinho's gone now, and at least it confirms what many of us felt, that the players weren't happy under Jose Mourinho and that he was suppressing them. I read some comments today that 4-letter words have been described from amongst the Manchester United players to describe Jose Mourinho, and there was clearly a lot going on there. Look, at the end of the day, I'm a big fan of Paul Pogba's. I think that now is the time. I'm not going to say it's going to work, but now is the time where the eyes are on him. He's got no excuses. If he's inconsistent under another manager, then, like Roy Keane says, I agree, he's got to go. But I think we'll see the best of Pogba now. And I think that I just think that the United fan base hopefully will just be united by a bit of positivity for a while, because it has been toxic, and dividing the fan base, I think, is never good when we're turning a new page, hopefully.
It had been toxic, but not. It hadn't really. There hadn't been this outpouring from the fans to get Mourinho out, which you see very regularly at a lot of clubs. It almost seemed as if there was not an acceptance, but a boredom with what was going on. It was frustration as opposed to outright naked anger against Mourinho.
Yeah, definitely. Apathy was the word I used a lot. I mean, on the United stand, we do the fan cams after the games, and you do get a few people coming on and being frustrated, but the general feeling was one. I mean, I was up at the Crystal Palace game, and people were leaving with 15 minutes to go, which for a United fan, I think, and even I thought we would score in the last minute, maybe Fellaini go off his shin or something. So there was definitely in the ground a real sort of resignation that it wasn't good enough. But yeah, I still think United are one of those clubs where booing is something they're not comfortable with. And look, I heard things like yesterday that the stock price has gone up, but to me that's not important. What I saw yesterday was that suddenly people are interested in Manchester United again. That Huddersfield game on Boxing Day will be a sellout. It wouldn't have been. And I think that the owners of the club need to understand that footballing decisions will make them money. If they get a positive vibe around Manchester United again, then they'll make money, and I think they need to understand that.
Who's going to bring that positive vibe? Who do you want to be the next full-time manager? And it looks like the deal to get the interim manager in place is largely done. People are reporting it largely as a done deal for Solskjaer at the moment. Is the interim decision the right one, and who do you want long-term?
I think long-term, I like Zidane. I think I disagree with people what they say about Real Madrid. I think Zidane's a good manager, and he's done very well at Real Madrid, and this is a good challenge for him. I like Laurent Blanc, and Pochettino wouldn't bother me too much either. I think they're all. I think it's the type of football that Manchester United need to play that's important. The short-term one's interesting. Solskjaer, if somebody had said that to me 24 hours ago, I'd have laughed. I mean, you look at what he did at Cardiff. Norwegian league is that much of a gauge, but I almost feel that what they're trying to do, I hope, is get somebody who will play or try and play attacking football, somebody who will unite the fan base, somebody who understands what the club's all about. And I just look at that as, look, would you rather Solskjaer for 5 months or Mourinho? And I'd rather have Solskjaer for 5 months because Mourinho had run his course. And it's a freebie, really. I don't expect us to get top four. I don't expect us to win the Champions League. So, I think I think United fans will be patient. It might not work, but I think we're already looking at next season anyway.
Yeah, like I do wonder to what level is the clear out required, Mark, because Like you take someone like Phil Jones, for example, he would say should be in and around the squad at all times. He should either be in the matchday squad. Some would say he should actually be starting for Manchester United. It depends on where you actually go. Like you've been quite critical of him yourself. Like you called him like a cat trying to bury a shit in a marble floor.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think this goes before Mourinho, so I'm not going to criticise Mourinho for this. And there were rumours that he was trying to ship players out, but wouldn't do it because he wanted certain amounts of money for people like Darmian. I'm not sure Phil Jones was ever on the list, but he should be. I mean, I've always said about Phil Jones, whether he was the reincarnation of Franco Baresi, if he can only play half the games for you, he shouldn't be at the squad. You can't, a centre-back needs to be able to play 90% of the games. And Phil Jones, I think over the last 4 or 5 years, has never managed half a season for us. So that, for me, is why, yeah, he's got mistakes in him. But I think he's symbolic of quite a lot of deadwood at Manchester United that needs shipping out, and apparently they're queuing up for new contracts. People like Ashley Young, Phil Jones, Chris Smalling's just signed one. Antonio Valencia, Fellaini's not. I'm not a fan of his. So I think United need to move a certain type of player out. We've got a lot of good young talent coming through. Maybe we'll see some of that over the next 5 months. But as I said before, I think there's the fundamentals of a really good team there. There's just certain players I think that have been hanging around the club for too long, and it is time for a clear out and a new direction. Yeah,
like I just think given the way modern football is and the strength of the squad, you now need to have to, I guess, even cement yourself in the top four. Like Phil Jones is a viable example. Like Jesse Lingard is another viable example. You've said that he's on Mark Goldbridge and Nathan Redmond's level, which to me suggests that he's not a top four player, despite the fact that he plays quite often for Manchester United.
Yeah, look, I mean, Jesse Lingard's a player that I've changed my direction on probably numerous times over the last couple of years. Where I would be with Lingard at the moment is, as a brand, I think he's one of the best footballers in the world. As a footballer, I think he's a bench player. And I think, funnily enough, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was a bench player at Manchester United. So I think that I wouldn't sell Jesse Lingard. I think, he's from the youth setup. He understands the club. He does give his all. I just think he's
on the level of Albrighton and Nathan Redmond.
As a bench player, I think
for a top four team.
I actually personally think Nathan Redmond's not a bad player, but I think
would you have him on the bench for a Champions League team?
Long term, probably not, but I think you've got to look over the next 2 or 3 years. Are United going to solve their first 11, let alone their bench? And I think Jesse Lingard gives you something for 20 minutes that we probably don't have enough depth to have at the moment. I think there's more important players to go before Jesse Lingard, but a lot of people would disagree with me. They would.
Mark, one last thing. We saw when Wenger and the way that Wenger lasted, we saw the explosion of Arsenal fan TV. Mourinho has probably been pretty good for you guys at the United stand. What happens if the next manager comes in and it's all sweetness and light and everybody's like, well, what have we got to be angry about now?
To be honest, I'm ecstatic. I mean, we've been doing the United stand for just over 3 years, and the biggest growth and interest we ever had was around the Europa League and the transfer windows, which is positive. So it's been a very interesting, toxic time over the last 3 months. And yeah, you do get a lot of people watching who are not supporters of your club, but it's also toxic within your normal viewers. So for me, I'm very, very happy with what's happened. I want positivity. I want this club to get back to where it needs to be. And if that means we lose Liverpool and Chelsea fans watching us for the laugh, then, so be it. So, yeah, I think Arsenal fan TV obviously did very well out of the Wenger years, but, I think the United stand will be fine. We're the biggest club in the world, and people are always interested in Manchester United. And if we can get back to where we are, I think we'll all be fine as a fan base, to be honest.
Mark, good stuff. Thanks a million for joining us this morning.
No worries. Thank you very much.
It's Mark Goldbridge there from the United stand.
Yeah.
I don't think Mark Albrighton was really good when they won the league. What's wrong with Mark Albrighton?
He has one. Like the thing is, he has won a Premier League.
Yeah, he was one of their best players. His form dipped after that.
Yeah, dramatically.
That whole team's form dipped.
Personally, I think if you're comparing Jesse Lingard, who plays quite a lot for Manchester United, to Mark Albrighton or Nathan Redmond, in my opinion, you don't have a Champions League standard squad. I think that's the next step you have to make if that's your take. Now, the thing is, I don't think Jesse Lingard is on Mark Albrighton or Nathan Redmond's level. I think he's a bit better than that. I think we've seen that. Well, I think we've seen it last season. Like, the jury is still out on Lingard.
Okay, I don't know what type of player he is. I can't, what is he?
Well, that's you could also make that same point about Dele Alli. What sort of player is Dele Alli? That's what a lot of the criticism is. That kind of is the epitome of what Jose Mourinho's reign has encapsulated, is it not? The idea of what is the identity of this team? What is the identity then of a number of players? Is Lingard a better number 10 or is he a better winger? Who knows? And hopefully it'll be players like him and players particularly like Rashford and Martial. We know what they're best at. We're getting the best out of them. And like I was making the point yesterday, maybe being over dramatic, but the idea of saving careers actually is perhaps something that's high on the agenda of the next Manchester United manager, because if Marcus Rashford and Anthony Martial go through another period of stagnation, it's not good news for them, is it?
No, but then if they're not up to it, cut bait and move on.
But I think they are up to it. I think talent-wise, I think you have to say
it looks that way.
Players in particular have the potential to be world class.
Yeah, they do, right? But it's at this point, it's still only potential. There's still only flashes of it. Like, I think that if you had a manager who believed in both those players and played them every game and gave them a very clearly defined role and said, when you're in possession of the ball, this is what you're supposed to do, when you're out of possession of the ball, this is what you're supposed to do, and drill that into them and put them in a position to succeed, we would then be able to decide what their ceiling is. But at the moment, it's like, well, great game, terrible game, subbed, playing well, subbed, great game. Oh, goals but not playing well. It's like, where's the pattern? There's no pattern.